Guys, come on up, wherever you are. Hacks and Films people, actors. You know, I was the marketing director here at Enzion when this film was released, and it was obviously huge. And right after the film festival, I was in New York City, and I was having drinks with my friend Farron at a bar. It was right when the film was being released, and I mentioned to her, she was involved in a lot of movie stuff in New York, and I said, "Oh, we just have this film out that these guys from Orlando did called the Blair Witch Project." She was really, "Oh, what's that?" Literally a guy, "Hey man, how you doing?" Literally a guy at the bar next to me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Have you seen this movie, The Blair Witch Project?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Is it real?" He goes, "I saw it. I'm terrified. I have no idea if this film is real or not." And I just thought for a second, oh my God, they did it. Like, here's like a sophisticated audience in New York City in a cool place. And this guy was sweating bullets. Well, he couldn't tell the movie was real or not. I was amazed. You're gonna need these. Here, pass them around. Use them as you see fit. Mike, you need to keep one. Wait, you guys, stop taking pictures of each other. Come on. Save it for a little while. I am gonna kind of host this Q&A. My name's Rich. I would like you guys, check those mics are all on. Make sure they're all on. Let's make sure they're all on. Anyway, I did love the fact that people did not know what they were seeing. And as I watched this tonight, I thought, that is just such a rare thing, because if this film had come out now, you know, it would be written about on Reddit before it was done. Everybody would spoil it. You would know, you would be so informed going to it. And this was this beautiful moment where people were able to go and go, I have no idea what I just saw. And I compare it a little bit to the way I saw Spinal Tap. People came out of Spinal Tap and were saying, why did they make a film about a shitty band? Like, I don't understand that. And I was just like, oh, that's so great. But what I would like you guys to do from here, from my friend Mike Manello down, please introduce yourselves. What? You're pointing to the print.
Ed Sanchez.
Sanchez. Ed Sanchez. My name is
Ladies and gentlemen, Eduardo Sanchez.
Coming in a little fashionably late. All right.
Power move.
So what I'm going to do to start this.
That was a setup for an applause.
Yes, this is all.
Power move.
What I want to do is start from this side, and each of you introduce yourselves, say what you did with the film, and then we'll start from there.
Ed Sanchez, and I was the co-writer, co-director, co-editor, and co-crafty.
Mike Manello, co-producer.
I'm Ben Rock. I was the production designer, and I was also charged with fleshing out a lot of the backstory.
Rob Cowie, producer.
I have my own microphone.
You'll be sharing it.
I'm Dan Mark, a co-writer, co-director, co-crafty. Co-crafty. Yeah, there you go.
Mike the Map Guy.
Yeah.
I'm Josh. I said fuck a lot.
Tell me where you are,
There were a high number of fucks in this film. That was the time. I think it was the time. I'm just going to go with that.
Are you saying the time for fucks?
Yeah, there was the time. No, trending-wise, it was an emo thing. I think.
Fuck was trending.
Fuck was trending.
I think we're the 27th most fucks in any film. Like
Really?
The list of films.
This is what I mean about the internet. You know that. Why do you know that? There's a list somewhere that says
I was
that.
hoping we'd be higher.
Somebody compiles this list, and it ruins all the fun.
We were trying to beat Glengarry Glen Ross, but we failed.
That's why you have sequels. Let us start off. I want to ask the audience a question first. How many, for you, is this the first time you've seen this film? Ooh, there's quite a few. More than I thought, and mostly in the D section. You should all come closer. For those of you who saw the film before, and actually for you guys, since you have the microphones, how does this feel seeing this 20 years later, knowing that it became a genre, and there are 100 such films kind of coming after it, all exploiting kind of a different angle, if you will. I mean, like Cloverfield it's shaky camera, but it's really a big, huge freaking monster movie. You know, it's a different thing. So do you look at those and say, oh, that came from our film, or do you see no connection to it? You start. Go ahead. Eduardo.
Sure, I'll start. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a connection to a certain extent. We didn't invent it, but we definitely popularized the whole idea of found footage. But it was weird because like after Blair Witch, like I remember we sat down and we were like, you could make a found footage movie about anything, like you could do a comedy, you could do this, you could do whatever, and we were like, we never thought we would make another found footage movie because to us it was like, the way we did it was because the story kind of lent itself to making this documentary. So we kind of thought it was kind of a gimmick, really, a little bit. So, and it was kind of interesting because Hollywood, like, not until Cloverfield came out, that was really like legitimized the found footage genre, and then Paranormal Activity, and then all these others came out.
And TV shows that follow it too,
yeah, all that stuff. So, and to me, it's like, it's great because like we were always like, every time one of these movies came out, they mentioned Blair Witch. So it's it's just great that people are still talking about your film.
But nobody sent you a check for that every time.
No, man.
No, it's amazing.
It's kind of like what George Romero felt when all those zombie things came out and he
Right.
wasn't getting any residuals. I think a little bit of that we felt. So, but it was fine.
What about, I want to ask a question of the actors, because you're way down at the end, and we heard you say fuck for the last 80 minutes.
As usual.
As
Way
usual.
down the end. Yeah.
Tell us the process
Kidding.
of, I can't imagine their pitch to you that makes you say, I mean, okay, you're unknown actors, yeah, we're going to be in any movie. But I can remember even, I was at Sundance at the screening, and I believe one of you said, when they asked the Q&A, you said, we're looking for agents. We're looking for jobs. I mean, it struck me that it was like, did you know what you were getting into with this? I mean, did you just kind of go, because they couldn't have shown you a script
No,
since
so
it was improvised.
a couple of things just real quick. One is thank you to Matthew Curtis, and thank you for having us here at Enzian. And to this audience that came out. And quickly, your question about 20 years. To me, it's like the show Lost, where you land on this island and somehow you're oddly put together and the universe makes a perfect storm. I was telling Josh during the movie, it's like the universe made a perfect storm, right? I mean, it really is, and it's just amazing to see everybody and talk about families and be together. And the biggest thing is just, it feels like no time has gone by, so it's a very odd feeling. But as far as being a young actor, it was just an ad in backstage, and for me, the appeal was fully improvised feature film to be shot in a wooded location with pay. I'm in. So that was improvisation, camping, and some pay. For me, it was exciting, and then getting to the audition and being put in these scenarios right away. As soon as you walked into the audition room, it wasn't like, hi, tell us your name. It was, hi, you've just served 10 years of a 15-year prison sentence. Tell us why you're up for parole. And that was immediate. So anybody who went, what happened? They're out, right? So we just went right into it, and then so the games began. So I don't know if you want to add, Josh.
I think for me it was. I mean, obviously I was excited to get a job, but I think the process was what was exciting to me. I was mostly, I was in my early 20s and living in New York and really had I wasn't like, I didn't need to be an actor. I just, I was an artist. And maybe I would be a photographer or a cinematographer or an actor or spoken word poet, or like I didn't know what the fuck I was gonna do. And I heard about this project, and I actually was shooting documentaries at the time. Obviously not well, as you can tell from the footage that I shot. But that was part of my job at the time, and I'd acted as a young kid, and I was like, oh, I can do those two things. And I just thought it was, I still to this day appreciate the kind of punk rock ethos of anything that's where the process will really dictate. There are so many ways that this could have been an absolutely horrible film. It was really an experiment. It was an experiment, and as you pointed out at the time, 20 years ago, it was an experiment that not a lot of people had tried in using the methodology that we did. And that was exciting to me.
Were you guys surprised when you saw the actual cut of the film? Because you came out of the woods, you had just been improvising for several days, and I'm taking it was a lot of months you guys took to cut this, as I recall. It was many, many months. So were you seeing the process, or did you just kind of, okay, here's the screening, let's sit down, and then you went, whoa, what was this?
I saw a couple little pieces along the way, but we also, when we went into the film, when we went into the woods, we were just filming this small part of what was going to be a larger film, which I'm going to let you guys
Well,
talk.
that was another question.
Talk to.
When Matthew joked about this, that the 3-hour cut or the 2.5-hour cut that was the rough cut, and I can remember being outside and Dan Winkler from The Weekly, is Dan here by any chance? He came out and he said, that's really good, and it's really long. And then later it was like, it's an 80-minute film, and everything got cut out of it. And what was the decision at that point to turn it from, because the stuff that you cut out was all the stuff on the Sci-Fi Channel side. I mean, a lot of that stuff, wasn't it? The documentary stuff? Ben's saying no, is that correct? Or wrong?
Yeah, no, there was a little bit of footage. There was like some news footage. There was the Rustin Parr newsreel, and there was like a 70s kind of pseudo, what was that show? In Search Of kind of style bits that were shot
Mystic
that were originally going to
occurrences.
get put in the film, and when they didn't, we just stopped production of that phase. And then after we sold to Artisan, part of the deal was they had an opportunity to put on a behind the scenes, and Artisan was like, well, we don't want to do a behind the scenes for this film. And we said, well, we have this footage, let's do something with that. And so Curse of the Blair Witch kind of fell out of having these other pieces, but the rest of it, like most of Curse of the Blair Witch, was kind of written and directed after the
okay,
fact.
Okay. So when you guys look at this now, how does it hold up for you? Hold up. I mean, are you looking at it still going, this is really what I expected it to be?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, I'm still in this sort of state of disbelief. I see Blair Witch referenced in books and modern culture as a verb,
Right.
and it blows me away. So, but it's really special for me to come back here to the Enzion and sort of kind of get in touch with sort of what inspired Blair Witch. It was a very honest approach to making a movie, you know. Ed and I and Greg Hale, who I wish could be here tonight, was an instrumental part to this process. But guys like Ben Rock and Christian Guevara, who helped with the backstory in the early days. Yes.
There's actually, I think there's a lot of people here who had something to do with this
Absolutely.
movie.
I mean,
Raise your
this
hand.
is-
Stand up. Stand up if you had something to do with the film. Stand up.
Seriously.
Please.
Don't be
like,
shy.
yes.
Yeah, stand up.
Okay, come on.
there's
Stand
some.
up. There we go. Where's?
I mean,
Where's Fahad?
Fahad. Hector. You know, like I
Carol.
saw. Lorraine.
I mean, it was really a process where we kind of didn't know what the fuck we were doing, but we had an idea. We had this sort of like notion that we could make something really scary. And when Ed and I were in film school back in the day, we're like, you know, we want something to be really fucking primal scary. And our whole casting process was sort of unorthodox. We wanted to kind of go in, like Michael was describing, like this sort of improv process of getting the actors in it. And it wasn't because we were like trying to do anything unique or different. We were just sort of trying to narrow down a handful of actors that had their shit, you know, that knew, that could think on their feet, that could improvise and be honest, which is really, that's the essence of acting, is being honest. And even in the edit process, it was like our first pass at the edit was like, okay, we need to get rid of everything that doesn't feel honest, that doesn't feel authentic.
So you had 24 hours of that.
Yeah, we had a lot of that. But that is rare, man. There's always some agenda. There's always some agenda with the acting and the casting and the editing and everything. There's always some bullshit agenda going on. And that was a point in our lives, I think, that we could just say, fuck it, we're gonna do it for real. We're gonna do it for real. And so the community, everything from the Enzion to you guys to this group up here on stage, we were all in it for real. And I will never forget that. I'll never forget that. So.
Do you think this film couldn't have been made had you been in LA or somewhere like that?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, what encourages me about filmmaking and about what Blair Witch has inspired in other filmmakers, one of the greatest rewards I get as a filmmaker is when a young filmmaker comes up to me and says, man, I'm going out and shooting the shit because of your movie. Like, go for it, man. Go for it. I mean, you may be the next Scorsese or the next whatever. You may blow our shit out of the water because some goofy movie we did way back when inspired you to pick up a camera and go shoot some stuff. So there's no better reward than that for me. So it is, we're all in the same soup together, trying to make a statement, trying to make something worthwhile to watch.
I just also wanted to add, to me, I think the film works as a credit to everybody, but especially as a credit to you guys. I think it works because it's a brilliant idea and there's a purity and there's an honesty to it, but it's not too professional. I think after, being on too many movie sets kind of ruins the opportunity to go and do something like this because you have a set of expectations about the way something should be. Mm-hmm. And there was so much kind of feeling our way through the dark, and especially for you guys who preceded us into the process of just trying to find something that wasn't necessarily derivative of anything else that you'd seen or experiences that you'd had, or trying to replicate something, which I think you do unconsciously once you become a professional.
Yeah, well, that's one of the interesting things why I think people bought it, is because they were not used to seeing a film where there were out of focus shots or large sections of black and just talking over it. I mean, there's so many kind of, I hate to be cinema studies on this, but there's so many cues to the audience that you're not actually watching a movie, you're watching something real. It's constantly reinforcing that to the audience. And I think before, again, the internet or Reddit or whatever would destroy that, this hit people in a very, very visceral way. They had not seen anything like this, so it must be something real. And they bought that first frame you said, put up, which is, we found their footage and this is their footage. I mean, that carried a lot of weight, I think, and it still carries weight.
I mean, I got a call from some cop in Albany or something, where I can't remember, it was in New York or something, like, I just got this video of this disappearance, and they're talking to me about, like, it's a law enforcement officer. I'm getting really nervous, and I haven't heard about this incident, and could you kind of tell me about what's going on? And he got into this whole spiel, and hey, I had to stop him and say, no, it's all fake. Because I was getting worried, have we broken the law or something? And there was a long pause, and then he just started laughing. I go, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome.
Do you think he was just kind of covering up his own tracks?
I don't know, maybe, well, but it was a time I think in our sort of culture where we weren't sort of quite dialed into the internet yet. We weren't as savvy and as sophisticated. I shouldn't say sophisticated. I think viral has always been around. I mean, viral media in whatever form it takes has always been around, but in this format was sort of new.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to sort of be in sort of this kind of nexus of reality TV just sort of coming into its own. 24/7 news coverage was sort of kind of conditioning audiences, I think, to look at reality TV as a narrative, as a narrative
That raw
format.
footage becomes seen.
Absolutely,
People start
yeah.
watching raw footage.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
No,
Mike.
there's we did it. Artisan did a test screening in Paramus, New Jersey.
Route 17. I know exactly what
Right,
the
it's a mall.
Yeah.
And and like the audience is watching it, and then afterwards they kind of like they keep a chunk of the audience, and then Proctor comes up and starts asking all these questions. And one of the questions we were sitting in the back, and I remember the Proctor kind of saying, "So, what would you compare this movie to?" And it was dead silence, and like nobody even said something like Cops.
Right.
And I think there have been lots of examples. There have been lots of movies that are kind of pseudo documentaries, or even moments in TV shows and movies where you're supposedly looking at something real, but you don't ever kind of fall into it. And I think a huge part of it, frankly, is the performances of these two guys and Heather on the end, because there's not like when we talk about the signifiers, yeah, it's real, but also there's not a false line spoken in the movie. There's nothing that makes you stop and go, "Oh, that's a beautiful performance." It's just you just feel like it's happening there. There's no wall, and I think that's a huge part of it. And I think that's why people didn't stop and say, "Oh, it's like the real world," or "It's like Cops," or "It's like like nobody could put their mind around it." And I think it's a huge part that I think gets kind of shoved under, because also there wasn't much like it out there.
I also think that's one of the reasons why the copycat films don't work as well, because they are too self-aware of they're making a film like this, and then they try to hit eye lines and they try to do this and that, and it doesn't quite have the authenticity.
Yeah, we didn't know we were making a film like this, right? So we were just, we didn't know.
Yeah.
I always say that
thanks.
it was like they were making a real documentary. Like they made a real documentary, and our job was to set up a world around them that they would document accurately, and they just weren't mentioning that they knew who was fucking with them. But that's all it was.
Ben, you were the production designer, so you were the guy who came up with all the stick stuff.
I
and
did,
whatnot.
yes.
Ben was the stick designer. Everybody who cheered the sticks at one point. And a lot of people proudly wore their button for. I was like, that's Ben's button. He probably did that.
You all owe me money.
Talk about how you guys were screwing with the actors. What was the process of the actual film going on? Did you guys just rest at home during the day and watch dailies while they walked around, or what happened?
Sorta. Yeah, there was a bit of that. I mean, the thing is, they would be out doing stuff, and we would have planned, like Ed and Dan would have come up with whatever the plan was. And so for instance, the night that they get chased out of their tent, we spent kind of weeks architecting how that was all going to go down, and how many people were going to go out into the woods, and who was going to do what. And that was one of the few times that Greg and I actually went out and placed the tent exactly where it was, because we wanted you to run in a straight line and not like trip and fall and die. So
Did they know they were going to go run that line that night?
no, they didn't. We kind of did that twice.
Yeah, the notes would have said you're going to hear a noise, you're going to have a disturbance, and you're going to run out of the tent. So the notes definitely would have told us, because they wanted us to run. The interesting thing about that shot, which to me is one of the iconic shots in the film, Heather's white sweater, Josh carrying the camera behind her, to me is unbelievable. And her screaming, "What the fuck is that?" So a couple things. One, what the fuck is that? What it was some guy wrapped up in a mummy outfit in the middle of the woods.
It's thermal underwear. It was head to toe
Thermal underwear, right, with a sock on his head. But it's creepy. But she pans it too, and I guess you guys cut it. But we never saw it. You never saw it. But we shot that scene twice because it didn't work, and so there was this whole production, meeting happening in the middle of the woods at 2 o'clock in the morning, and Ed's going, "Actors, get away from them. Get away. Stop talking to the actors. You can't. No, we got to shoot this. Oh, you're not allowed to talk. Stop." So I don't know if you remember this, but it's true. Like the idea was to have minimal contact with any outside human beings other than the three of us, and that night didn't work, and we had to reshoot that. We also had to reshoot the
Sun
ending.
came up too.
And yeah, the sun came up, right?
Well, the CP16. Remember on the first take out of the tent, the CP16, the rubber band on the take-up reel, fell off while they were Josh was shaking it or somewhere, and just ruined the footage. It just didn't. The footage was going into this thing, and it just ruined it. So Neil had to go aside and fix the thing, and then we had to reshoot it. It's one of the only things we had to reshoot other than the very end. But yeah, I remember like them, because they were like, this is like probably like the third or fourth night. And they were just desperate for like just to talk to somebody else. And I remember like we had like 3 or 4 people out there with this guy with the mummy outfit also, who actually fell into the river, into the creek on the way. Remember that? And we were like, oh my God, this poor guy. Yeah, like just to warm him up. And it was October in Maryland, so it was cold, but and I just remember like I don't know. I think I just remember Mike like looking like at somebody and like talking to them, and I was like, "Hey guys, we need to like segregate the actors from the rest of the crew. You guys can't talk to us, all right?" And just like the look on Mike's face, like,
No.
like why are you doing this to us? But they were cool, and they were just the movie wouldn't have done anything without these guys, and I just want to thank them again for the performance.
Rob Cowie there in the middle, who was one of the producers on the film. Can you give me some, just for the film buffs out there, when you were pitching this film to go get backing, I would love to know what the reaction was when you're telling people or showing them it's 80 minutes of shaky footage and people in the woods, and it's terrifying. I mean, what was the pitch and the response?
So one of the amazing people who invested in this movie, his name is Richard Ungaro. And how I met Richard is he lived on the hill that I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was going up the hill, and I saw his daughter in a bikini walking her.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know.
I figured they have money.
This, by the way, this is how movies get made. She was walking her dog, and I hit her brick mailbox.
On purpose?
With my car. Yeah, with my car.
Why? Because you were like distracted?
Yeah, no, this is going somewhere, I promise. And I did hit her brick mailbox, and it just so happened that he was one of the senior vice presidents of Blockbuster Video at the time. Yeah, and I did. I pitched him Blair Witch, and he.
Where were you in the making of it when you pitched him that?
Yeah, she was wearing a bikini, and that kind of distracted me. But it was the best. It was the best.
It was all pre-planned.
It was
like, the Blockbuster CEO works.
It was the best brick mailbox I've ever hit.
Destroyed.
Because he's still my dad's best friend, and he did see the movie, and to his credit. He I told him about it, and I told him what we were doing, and he ended up investing like blindly. And the first cut that we had, that I actually had a couple of investors in Atlanta who came in, and I showed the film to them, and my dad was so embarrassed. He was so ashamed at the end of the movie. It's true.
Why? Because it looked like a piece of shit?
Because it looked like a.
We've just learned so much about Robin.
Oh my God.
Jesus, my son has wasted 2 years of his life on this shit.
Don't talk
also
to my
like
friends.
every friend that my dad had, right?
Don't talk to our dentist anymore.
And Rich Ungaro like turned around and he said, "This movie is going to be a hit," and it was.
Really?
That's the Rich Ungaro story.
Now, thank you, Rich. We are going to be taking audience questions in a little bit, and there's a microphone over there. And if people want to kind of mosey on over, I'll point out to you, and we'll get a question in from the audience. So feel free to move over. Who were the guys who? I remember when this was going to play Sundance, like Sheila Nivens from HBO was coming down to Orlando, and there were all these people sort of, or being talked about coming down to Orlando. I don't remember the whole thing, but. Did the industry get this the way Rich did, or was the industry like, this seems like a cheap movie, we can make something with it? maybe it'll go direct to landfill or VHS. I mean, did they get it, or did they just sort of went like, oh my God, here's the next genre that we're going to hit on?
I mean, it was pretty early in the process, but I have to give a shout out to Kevin Fox, who was one of the early producers on the project. And in this room, he came and saw a screening. Christian Guevara, he was working with a project with Christian Guevara on the East Coast. Christian said, you got to see this film. Kevin, who was from LA, came out here, watched the movie. It was the long, freaking 2.5-hour cut we had.
I think so.
It was a huge cut. And we were passing out like comment cards and whatever. And Kevin saw the movie. And after it was done, and he was like, for us, he was like a legit LA producer guy. You know, at our level, we had no clue. And after the movie was over, he walked up to us and said, you guys are going to be celebrities. And we're like, what the fuck are you talking about? He said, this movie's going to be a hit movie. And he knew it way back then. And he was instrumental in getting us hooked up with Endeavor, our agents, who flew the fuck out to freaking a pool hall in Orlando to sign us to Clicks.
Well, yeah, we had like these like two of the partners and like a major guy flew down and we're like, well, we want to meet with you guys, so we took him to like this crappy pool hall.
Right.
Anywhere you want to go.
Anywhere you want to go.
Oh, we'll go to Clicks and play some pool.
Get a picture.
Oh my God! Yeah, get a couple of pictures and.
You're working the LA.
It was like on Cimarron, right?
Like, what's the most expensive restaurant in Orlando?
Right, no,
You're like,
it's
wait,
Clicks.
That's what they're going to expect us to do. Let's go to Clicks.
And they'll bill you for it eventually if they sign
Yeah.
you. You know, it's all going to come back around.
But that was like, we were clueless, in those early days. But, he was one of those individuals that said, I see the potential in this. And there were those sort of tentpole moments throughout our process that people saw the potential in the film. And, internally we all thought Blair was cool and had an engaging kind of like 2-line pitch, right? It had a hook to it.
Yeah.
But you never really know how big it's going to be. You just don't, we have no reference point. This was our first movie. And it was guys like him, and then he hooked us up with, Klein and Walker, who was our publicist in New York. We did a screening in New York. And we were like, these people were signing on to this movie as we were moving through this process. And we were just like, what the hell's going on? These guys are signing on, and they're doing it with no upfront cash, no commitment up front. They were just buying into the conceit of the film. And that was pretty cool.
So I gotta interrupt you because I had the most. But Blair has been like this, I think, for all of us. One of the guys that we ended up being connected to is a guy named Stuart Rosenthal, who is the most. He's our attorney, and he helped sell the movie and is really amazing. At Sundance, we had a reunion and we had dinner with Stuart. And Stuart was telling me about this guy, Neil Tolkien. Do you guys know Neil?
Neil and I go way back.
Blank looks from everyone. Go ahead.
So Kevin ended up knowing this guy named Neil. And Neil is actually the person who introduced us to Stuart, who introduced us to Bob Icke, who introduced us to like all of these people. And he's one of these huge unsung heroes of the Blair Witch Project. And nobody ever knew his name, like ever. And I always felt like the actors never got, honestly, the respect that they ever needed. And this guy, Neil, who was like majorly instrumental in the success of the movie, never got his due. So this one's for Neil.
There was also the whole
But
thing about the
hold on,
actors.
there's more. I mean, the thing about the making of a movie is like you have people like that all the way through, and like the reason why it's so kind of emotional to be here at Enzian is because I saw outside Lorraine Wood is here, and she brought John Pearson to the Florida Film Festival way back when, and that connection, which you know, that connection to Blair helped get the initial, I think John was first money in.
First money in.
So John was first money in. So it actually happened as a result of a connection made here at the Florida Film Festival. And I think the story of the making of a movie is filled with hundreds of connections like that happen from all different places. A movie it's not just, you know, it's never a linear story. It's always filled with
It's not a
these kinds of
solo
twists.
project,
And
either.
there's tons of people. That's why,
Which is why, like, things like the Florida Film Festival are so important.
yes.
This is how movies get made.
Yeah. Let us.
Real quick, not to be a giant suck up, but I would say that the Enzian was like one of the most pivotal places in the making of the film, period, because Mike was able to hook Dan up with John Pearson at that thing. Because of Lorraine, we did the test screenings here when Mike and I worked here. Like seriously, the first when we got the Sundance print, we strung it up in the projector up there and watched it here on a Saturday morning and brought people in to see the print before it went off to Sundance. And I feel like I wouldn't say that without Enzian there'd be no Blair Witch, but it would be completely different. And to me, it's like so instrumental to the making of the film.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go to our questions over here. So let's start with the first gentleman there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, go ahead. Ask a question to the microphone.
Hi, yeah, so I wanted to take a moment to discuss the marketing campaign of the movie because in 2012, I went on a school camping trip with like 20, 30 kids in New Jersey. And like the biggest campfire story that we heard all around was, this is where the Blair Witch murders happened for sure. Like that was like, to this day, the Blair Witch has become like a legendary, not only film, but just a story. And I think part of that is how the film was marketed. And like, you hear people a little bit older than me talking about when they first went to see the movie, and it's like, oh, I went in, I believe that this was a documentary, this was a true story. So I just kind of wanted to know, like, was that something that was in your mind from beginning the film, like starting
How they were
to
gonna pitch
make
it?
the film?
Yeah.
Or was that something that came later on? And who kind of came up with the idea to market and pitch this film as something that actually happened?
I was hoping that his campfire stories were going to be about the marketing of the Blair Witch Project. That would have been really funny. But no, that's not very scary. Mike, why don't you address this first,
Well,
Mike?
you know, the decision, the pivotal decision for Blair Witch was, I think, the decision on how to make the movie, because the decision to make to improvise the movie and to create a mythology, and Ben and the rest of the guys developing this kind of backstory and saying, okay, it's going to be improvised, so we need to create a backstory because that material is going to be given to these guys, because if they're going to talk about the Blair Witch, there has to be a shared mythology. So all of that material that was kind of created for the way the movie was going to be made, nobody was thinking about marketing at that time, really. That was for the making of the movie. The marketing is something that kind of happened organically, and I will say that even the original website and a lot of the original interactions with people, we weren't really thinking about it as marketing. It was something that kind of just happened organically. And there were a lot of different reasons why we had to put that stuff up. Like we definitely thought about marketing, and so when you see if you see the silver pins, right? They're a silver pin of a stick figure, but they're not the stick figure that Ben designed. It's been turned into a logo by Steve Carcella. I don't know if he's here, like a designer who took the image and then turned it into a logo that was specifically meant to be an icon of the film, and making the posters. And so there was intentional marketing thinking, but the website was really kind of out of a need to engage people, because John Pearson had put clips from Blair Witch online and people were asking questions. So that just kind of generally happened organically, and it was because there was this material there to put online.
But even before that, when we all of us went to UCF, and and we're in the film program, and Greg had come back from LA because he tried to do whatever in LA, and he came to my wife and I, Sarah, who's here, and these guys had done some still photographs, and they had edited it into like a short reel, and Greg showed that to Sarah and I, and we watched it, and at the end of it, it said, and this footage is going to become available, and Sarah and I both freaked out. We're like, that's incredible, that's amazing, and Greg said, yeah, well, if you help us make the footage, it will be incredible. And that was literally how I got to know the Blair Witch Project. So it was part of the genetics of the story very, very early on.
Real quick, too. I think I might have been in right before you, Rob, because I'd gone over to Greg's house and he pitched me the idea exactly like this happened in the 1700s, and then this happened in 18 whatever, and then this, and then this, and then these, and then Ed had these friends, and they were making a documentary about it. I was like, oh, that sounds cool, because I'm into all this paranormal crap. And he was like, yeah, but they disappeared while they were making it. And I was like, no way. And he said they found their footage under a house, and I was like, you're fucking kidding me. And he said, and like, we're gonna analyze it. Ed and Dan and I are gonna analyze it. I said, you guys are gonna fucking die. And then he read me into it, and I feel like that pitch that Greg gave me, that was kind of the bare bones version of the mythology and the idea for what the film would be, like that became Curse of the Blair Witch. That became everything that was on the website. And I think Mike's absolutely right. It just kind of organically grew out of it, because the idea kind of had a basis in all this stuff, and it was the most compelling thing about it was that it had been around forever, but we'd never heard of it.
Well, you know, to me, the beauty of the marketing thing was always that you guys gave less than what everyone wanted. You gave something, there was something out there. Did you see the TV show? Did you see it? It was on, now you couldn't see it again. There was no YouTube, there was nothing to go back to. So you were always talking about what you had missed. So when you got the chance to see the film, it was a moment, because this is the payoff.
Well, and you know, when we were putting stuff online, I remember Ed saying, like, we can never put anything online that confirms that it's supernatural, and we can never put anything online that confirms that it's not supernatural. Right. So, like, everything went through this filter of, like, if you wanted to believe in witches, could you make the case that this was evidence that it was a witch? And if you didn't want to believe in witches, could you make the case that this was evidence otherwise? So there was definitely consciousness in terms of that.
Even the actors, there was that whole riff about the actors were not seen from Sundance until after the release of the film, and they're dead because they're dead. You know, that was an actual thing. People discussed the actor. I mean, you were at Sundance.
That was crappy.
I thought, you know, it kept things going.
Well, I remember like sitting across the street from the Angelica, and with Mike, right, Mike, and seeing the line of people going in the movie, and Mike was like, he's like, I can't even show my face. I'm like, I know, dude, that sucks.
No, and I'm just gonna say, if nobody else is saying it, that I think you kind of so much of the marketing. It's such a strange film in the sense that people who have nothing to do with filmmaking, not saying that you, sir, didn't, but like my mom's friend would be like, yeah, no, and the marketing on that film was really brilliant. Who's the company behind the marketing? Like, the marketing gets talked about a lot, and to me, the marketing was always part of the mythology, and was something that you guys had set up that was very homegrown, and Artisan, who the people who were at that company at the time, my memories were mostly of getting yelled at by them. They were really motherfuckers. I was not a fan, and you guys might have had a different relationship. And I think they did a tremendous job servicing something that you guys had set up already.
Yeah, I mean, Artisan.
Well,
Artisan
I
was
mean,
great.
to talk about the marketing a little bit, because marketing is sort of like a generous term, I think, because a lot of what we were doing, getting back to like the honesty of the movie, is like, I mean, when Ed and I first came up with this idea, I mean, I remember when you and I sitting in freaking film school smoking a joint or whatever, and we're talking about, remember that freaking house in the woods, and we're talking about like this, you know, this camera that goes into this house, right? And that was sort of the impetus of like the whole conceit of the movie was like, you're in this moment that you can't escape from, right? You're forced to the view going into this creepy house in the end, and everything sort of orbited around that idea. And the marketing was no different. Like when we started doing the marketing, it sort of grew organically. Like we put stuff up on the web that we had shot, and it was really the audience that sort of asked us questions about, well, what's next? And we looked at each other. Oh shit! Well, what is next?
Well,
so we had to fill in the blanks as we were asked. So it was this really organic crosstalk between the audience, our original audience, and us creatively.
It wasn't, I mean, like I said, I think in our minds, I think at the time, the website and the mythology was not marketing. It was just something we were doing. I think for us, the marketing was the poster, the trailer, the logo, like those things were the marketing. And the website, the website was just something we were doing. It was, but and I think that no, it's because when we think about marketing, I think of like Artisan not liking the original shot of Heather that's on the poster, and getting her into a studio, and getting the same blue hat, and photographing her at high
reshooting
resolution.
the end of the film.
Yes, and asking us to reshoot the end of the film, but getting her in a studio, and then having her like arch her eyebrows and sending us a version of that poster. I remember, I think we got it on April Fool's Day, so I thought it was a joke, but it was actually real. And getting a version of the poster, and it's like, does Heather kind of look sexy in this poster? Like, is that what's supposed to be? And it was like a recreation of the shot, but it was in a studio, and being like, no. And like that, those are the kind of arguments that were happening over the marketing of the film, where things like, put the original shot from the movie on the poster. She's supposed to be terrified for her life, not sexy but scared. And
There was this there was this amazing.
That was my job.
They rejected that poster, Mike. Sorry, that was.
There was.
I still have it
that
hanging
poster,
in my
Mike. I
room.
still have that poster.
There was this amazing experience, because it's one of my favorite Ed Sanchez moments ever. We got, right after Sundance, we got invited up to New York to go to Artisan, and they had said to us, how do you guys want to market the movie? And we all got together, and we made a list of like 30 things. But the Ed Sanchez moment is, before Artisan was Artisan, they were live. Like, was it Live Nation? What not live? Live entertainment.
Yeah.
Which was a DVD house. So they had all of these DVDs. So we walk into Artisan for our first meeting ever, and the first thing that Ed says is, "Where do you guys keep the DVDs?"
I don't remember it that way.
We love your company. What DVDs do you have for us?
No, I mean, the only thing I remember is just all of us like diving into the DVD pile.
Yeah,
like we were starving or something. We were like on a desert island. They were giving us food. Like, oh my God, they got
the
this.
Golden
And all
Globus
those
films or
DVDs
something.
we
Is that
took.
what they had at that time? Was all
we were so broke. We were so broke. We were so broke that we walked out of that marketing meeting with a stack of DVDs. Like, it was our first Hollywood.
St. Mark's.
Yeah.
And sell them at Kim's Video. Can we get another question?
Yeah.
Let's get a next question.
Thanks,
in.
guys.
So, that was long. I'm sorry.
That was a
We'll try to
long-ass
shorten
answer.
these responses now.
I can't wait.
Ask us
Go
another
ahead, hit
marketing
the question there, sir.
Fucking Mike, man. I couldn't get tickets to the Enzian, so I had to see it at the Oviedo Marketplace. So anybody that was in the house for Oviedo Marketplace 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Did you touch the mic there? The mic
Is
went
it
off. I don't know. Just shout it. Go ahead. I'll repeat it.
Fucking Mike, man. The ecosystem around all of this stuff is amazing. The mythology, the marketing, and all of that shit. But even part of the story is the actors and what they went through. And they were stranded in the woods for 8 weeks, not knowing if they were being filmed or not. What's the dopiest thing you've heard that is utter bullshit about the making of the movie?
Ooh, that's a good question. What's the best lie you guys have heard about the filming?
I mean, the best lie is that the actors were like totally scared and like fucking they didn't know what was going on or whatever. I mean, it always frustrates me when I hear that what they brought to bear on this movie from a pure performance and talent standpoint is underrated. I mean, part of what we did was we did almost too good of a job, and they almost did too good of a job, because they obviously knew they were in a movie, and there's tons of outtakes of us resetting and redoing getting directing notes and all. But what you see in the final edit, the authenticity, the honesty of the performance is something, to this day, as a director, I still strive to get in other actors.
Thank you.
All right.
And it's rare. It's rare.
No groupie stories.
No,
no.
a goofy story.
Oh, a goofy.
Very, very quickly. I won't. I had no groupies. So.
I was like, wait a second.
No, seriously, no. For reasons that are too complicated to explain, I found myself a guest on the Art Bell show, the Coast to Coast with Art Bell show.
Oh my goodness.
And
you must have been in
rest
high
in
heaven
peace.
with that.
Totally, because I love all the conspiracy stuff. So he's interviewing me about the Blair Witch, and he said, "So has anyone found out what happened to these actors? Does anybody know what happened?" This is in 2000, and they had been on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
They were alive, and so live on the Art Bell show, I told him, like, it's a movie, they're actors, they're okay, and it freaked him out even more.
That's
Just
the worst
on,
thing you can tell a conspiracy theorist is not true. That's part of the conspiracy.
You know, I would like to talk about Heather for a second since she couldn't be here. She's I apologize to the people right behind us. I was talking to Josh through the whole movie, but Heather really, you know, she takes on the brunt of this film. She bears the brunt of it. She has to be the most raw, honest, authentic, from the snot and the boogers. I mean, that scene alone to me it's not only brilliant, it's iconic what she did with that the first selfie, really, if you think about it. But you know, she carried this film in a way that nobody really has to carry a film. And I say that because her objective is to keep that camera rolling, despite our objective to get her to turn the camera off. If you think about the movie in a nutshell, yes, we're being haunted, yes, we don't know what's going on, but it's like, stop filming. Hers is, I have to continue to film. And she has to always figure out why she needs to continue to film. And I don't know that that could be embedded in the directing notes. Probably not, right? So it was her intrinsic motivation to show us what we saw. So I just want to say Heather's amazing.
All right. Let's go to another question over here.
Hi. Okay. So you talked about the like the stick figure logo. I was just wondering like what your inspiration was for that like visual image.
Ben, it was like an $8 budget.
Strap in.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I'm ready.
Dan had given me a design. I'm going to make this the shortest version of the story that I can possibly tell. Dan had given me a design that would have required like a production line. And even though all of us went out there for about half a day, most of it was done by myself and a gentleman in the audience named Fahad. And he and I we had to make hundreds of them in a day, and I felt really, really awful because I was like, I need a warehouse and a crew, and it was like, you know, me and Fahad, and so I had this book that I bought called Magical Alphabets by Nigel Pennick, which I'd gotten for the Transitus Fluvii, which is the lettering around the doors and windows in the house at the end. And I was flipping through it, and there's a thing in it called the Rune Man. And if you look at it, sort of, you can kind of see the stick figure. And I was doing a run to Bethesda or something that day to pick up something, and I literally pulled off to the side of the road, and I sketched it on a legal pad so I wouldn't forget it. Then I went back to Ed's wife Stephanie's house, and I went and I got some sticks, and I had some really expensive twine that everyone gives me shit about. And I made one. And then I showed it to Ed.
Too much money.
And there is footage of this, you can find it online, of Ed, me holding the first one up, and Ed saying, "It just looks like a pile of sticks tied together." And I was like, crestfallen. I was destroyed. And I did what every great production designer did. I completely ignored the director and stayed on my direction. I would fire me for having done that today. But if you look that up, Magical Alphabets by Nigel Pennick, you can sort of see what I'm talking about.
There's the inspiration.
Thank you.
All right. Let's have another question there.
Can I just do a quick thing about the stick?
Sure.
So, you know, real quick. There's so many serendipitous things that happen on this movie, one being the stick men. I came across them first, way ahead of the other actors, exhausted, tired, looking at what looked like sticks tied together with twine. And it wasn't scary. It was awesome, but it certainly wasn't scary because the twine really does look like twine, like that you buy anywhere. And somehow magically...
It was much more expensive, better twine.
Yeah. But if you think about the serendipity, so I say, okay, I gotta be scared now. Whew, here we go. I'm gonna start screaming, and off we go. And I think we did that scene a couple times. But anyway, when you watch the film, the backlighting of the sun, if the sun was hitting what we were looking at with the camera, it doesn't work. But because the sun is behind them, you almost never see that twine. And when you do see it, it doesn't seem like twine. You're not focused on what it looks like. So I always thought about the lighting of the fortuitousness of the sun being behind the stickman. And maybe you were brilliant enough to think about that.
We placed the sun, yeah.
There you go. But anyway, that was, I thought it could have come off as real cheesy.
But it's also the low resolution of the video back then. I mean, if it had been 4K resolution now, you would have seen everything. It was so different. So the low tech nature of the movie worked in our favor back then.
That's it. Go over here, ma'am.
Yeah, this is for the writers and the researchers here. As someone who grew up in Burkittsville and Frederick, and I've always read online.
We apologize.
No, that's okay. You know,
You're welcome.
It was always fought around the dinner table, like, why did you pick our town? So, you know, I'd love to know what the research behind that was.
You really live in Burkittsville?
No. Yeah,
That's
between
awesome.
Frederick and Burkittsville, like right halfway up the mountain.
Wow.
Yeah.
I apologize for all the shit we put you guys through.
It's cool. There's weirdos every year that show up. We get it. But I'd love to know why.
It really was like a very innocent, Dan and I were driving and we were looking for a town to kind of base the history in, and it was just a beautiful
From Orlando
town.
to Maryland, you're like, this place.
No, it was near I still live like 20 minutes from Burkittsville, so. So we were driving by and we saw it, and it was like, the hill behind it, and we're like, wow, this is great. And then we just kind of called it, Blair and whatever. But I mean, if we thought that the movie was
it had this awesome cemetery.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was just like, idyllic kind of small historic town, but if we knew that the movie was going to blow up the way it was, we would have made it. We would have called it something else. We were really sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's just if you're from there, you're like, the woods aren't that serious. But I mean, they really got lost in the movie.
Do you guys have a festival for it every year?
There are people that
they
go
wanna
there
forget
every
it?
year and like put candles on graves.
I cannot tell you how many mayors of Burkittsville I have groveled and apologized to.
It's wonky, but it's cool.
All right, a couple more questions. Next, please. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I waited 20 years to tell you guys this.
Uh-oh.
I was so upset when you guys were still alive.
Me too.
Listen. Okay, I'm born and raised in Germany, and Catholic, and I got raised preschool with nuns. They scared me to death with witches, because I wasn't good at all. So now, seeing your film, I go like, I know it, witches are real. Second of all, when you guys all died, or so-called died, as a mother, I couldn't sleep for days because I felt sorry for the parents.
There you go.
So one day my daughter come to me and say, Mom, guess what? They're on the red carpet. I screamed, screw you. Okay, another question I have. I'm also with the Orlando Independent Filmmakers, and two of my films can be seen in the International Christian Film Festival. This one was nominated for Best Film. But make a long story short, I've just made a film about a horse, and I got sponsors to make it into a feature. How do I get beyond film festivals and put it out to all the films, to all the movie theaters, not just into one?
Okay, explain your career in a couple of seconds, guys. Just go for it. Anybody want to jump in there?
Well, I mean, there's no single path, right? I mean, it's, one, the film has to stand on its own merits, right? I mean, people can talk all day long about the marketing of Blair Witch, and they can talk about the rags to riches story. They can talk about so many different aspects of the movie, but at the end of the day, when people walked into the theater, it paid off. It scared people. So movies have to deliver. So that for us, we were fortunate enough to be surrounded by people that got the movie and that could help us go to the next level. But today, things are a lot different. I mean, there's so many different ways to market a movie. There's so many different ways to distribute a movie. And what I tell young filmmakers is, one, you have to have a movie that delivers. You have to have a film that actually people want to see. And then you have to find what is unique about your film. Because what we had on Blair Witch was a simple, very, very simple hook premise. And if someone responds to that hook, responds to that premise, then at least you have a starting point to market and to get people interested in seeing your film. So I don't know anything about your project, but I tell young filmmakers today is find what is intrinsically unique about your movie that people will want to see in a very short kind of in a short way, and that's tough. That sometimes that is the most difficult thing about getting your movie off the ground and getting people to want to see it. Is what is it about? What is the one line or two line elevator pitch of your film?
So work on that is the first thing.
Yeah, because I did a film for a friend of mine, and I did a horse movie because it's based on a true story. I put it in a 30-minute short. I didn't know it got so big, and we went to the premiere to Pennsylvania. We made the front page of the newspapers. The whole theater was filled up. Now we get it sponsored to put it into a feature because everybody wants to put it into a feature. And we have some celebrities involved. But from that, I have no idea how to go further from that once it's into a feature.
It's a virtually impossible question to answer, only because we've all been there and kind of. I mean, you heard the story about all the just odd, fortuitous things that happened along the way with this film, and that was 20 years ago. It's certainly, there's so much more power. There's so much more individual to artist to audience power that exists in today's world.
And it's not a given also. I mean, one of the things that struck me is you guys were huge with this film, and then for years afterwards, we heard about Heart of Love, your sequel, which is even in this. My wife pulled this out, the Florida Film Festival guide of the year that their film played here. You mention it there, Heart of Love, and that never happened, right? I mean, and you guys were on top of the world with the Blair Witch. Why didn't your next movie ever come out? I mean, if you're speaking about guys who should have the mojo to get a movie that they want done, sorry about that. I don't mean to kill you on this one, Ed. I just...
Oh my God. I mean, look, like she's asking like how to distribute it, how do you get your movie out there? It's like, the best thing is, like you're saying, like festivals is the first round. And then if you don't get any bites, if you don't get any of the major festivals and you don't go into any markets and you don't get any bites for like somebody distributing it, then you have to go think maybe a self-distribution or maybe, you can make a little money on Vimeo. Like, I mean, there's a bit different ways to get the movie out there. But like Josh said, is like, that's a really complicated question. But Heart of Love was like, I mean, it was just like, it was just like Blair Witch was like this big explosion that went off in our lives. And like, it was like, a lot of it was like what Dan said, it was like a lot of it felt like it was happening to somebody else. And, we had, unlike a lot of other, independent filmmakers that have like a success, our agents actually put a good deal for us together, and nobody expected the movie to make that much money. So we actually made a pretty good amount of money, so we didn't have to like say yes to anything else. Like we didn't have to go and say, yeah, I have to do this movie because I'm, running out of money or whatever. So there was a certain luxury to that we could actually try to make our next movie. And Dan and I really wanted to make a comedy called Heart of Love, and it was kind of like this crazy, like Monty Python, Saturday Night Live, like, just crazy Naked Gun type of movie, and it just wasn't, there was just too much that we didn't really understand the business. Artisan was kind of the distributor of Blair Witch, kind of had us in a difficult situation contractually, and so it just kind of fell apart And it was just something that happened, And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't. Dan or I we didn't make any movies until 5 or 6 years after Blair Witch. But it's all happened for a reason. But Heart of Love is a big story, and it was just it's a much longer story than I have time for. But it was we learned a lot, but we also learned that the business can eat you up. I mean, Dan and I had dinner with Terry Gilliam in London, and we love Terry Gilliam. But the thing I remember is that he told us, he was like, "This industry is going to eat you guys alive," and he was kind of smiling and Dan and I were like, we kind of knew that it was going to eat us alive, but we were like, yeah, whatever. And it definitely ate us up, and just the way it is.
Do you think that if this movie had come out a decade later, would your opportunities after this film have been different? Because I think of the indie guys now seem to be able to zigzag between different genres and stuff a lot more easily.
So there's a movie that, by the way, please go see this movie. It's called I Am Mother. It's coming out on Netflix in the summer. It was one of our interns, a guy named Michael Green, who wrote it. It sold at this past Sundance, and I just had lunch with him and the director 2 days ago, and they're on fire. They are where we were right after Blair, and the thing that came away from the lunch was this is an extraordinary difficult business, and we've all managed, thank goodness, to stay married and have children and earn a living working in the entertainment business. But I'm going to repeat what Josh said. It's an impossible question to answer because it's an excruciatingly difficult business. And the only advice that I have for anyone is just do good work that makes you happy, and keep on doing it. And
but yes, and by the way, you made something and people responded to it, and now you're getting to make something else, which is a huge fucking win. That's congratulations. Really, really, really sincere congratulations on that, because that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I will say that was the full extent of our ambition in making Blair Witch was, can we make enough money to return the money to the investors plus more than they would have made just playing the stock market so that we can get a little bit more money to make another movie? So that, the ambition in making the movie was not, we're going to make, 250 million globally. It was, can we make a movie that's going to make money so we can make another movie?
Right. Another question there?
Yeah, I just have to say, I'm always so impressed in the film how you guys are.
You got to talk up. I can't hear you.
In the film, I'm always so impressed how for the actors, you're able to start establishing this hostility towards each other in the very beginning. You can sense it, even though you're given such little to work with. So I was wondering, for something like that, do you have to kind of meet with each other to plan that out, or is it more found just on the fly as you go on?
That's a great question. We, to this day, can't stand each other. This is all bullshit. No. Honestly, it was confusing to me at first. We took a bus ride down. We were cast after weeks of casting. Once we were cast, we really had no contact with each other until we took a Peter Pan out of New York to Baltimore, where Ed was 3 hours late to pick us up at the bus station, but that's okay. That's
Always
true story.
remember your flaws, don't they?
But through right from the get-go, we were thinking about how we were going to have this improvisational relationship between the three of us. And I think really even before we talked to the directors after we'd been cast, and once we started talking with each other, was let's start to form how we feel about each other now. Because acting is about relationships and responding to them. So it was fine and everything, but then when we got to the shoot, once we were in the woods and even in the hotel and things like that, we had no delineation between who was Josh, Mike, and Heather, and who were Joshua, Michael, and Heather. And the characters were Josh, Mike, and Heather. And the actors were Joshua, Michael, and Heather. So it's confusing, because originally we were cast as Bill, John, and Jane. And Greg Hale had called us all a couple weeks before the shoot and said, you know, how do you guys feel about using your own names? It would just feel more authentic, and you're going to get really uncomfortable out there, and it'd be easier just to create this relationship using your own names, so you don't kind of have to think about it. It's not. It becomes less acting and more behavior. So we were all for that because that's what we wanted. We want to create something that was authentic. Anyhow, long story short, we're like on day 1 of The Woods, and if you ever wanted to reshoot something, you really had there was no line. So I said, I think it was me, because I'm brilliant. I said, no, it's not true. I'm actually dumb as rocks. But I said to the guys, hey, why don't we have a couple code words, because I may want to reshoot something, but I don't really know if you're really mad or you're behaving mad. But you know, if I want to reshoot something, maybe we should have a code word that says we're going to stop, we're going to break the scenario. So we had the code word. We came up with the word taco, which was bad day 8 when you're starving and you're saying taco out loud. But we had the word taco. And the rule was that if I said taco, Josh and Heather, wherever they were, would have to say it back so that we would all know everybody has broken the scenario. Hey, that sucked. I was just overacting right there. Can we try this again? Hey, I saw the twine on the stickman. Let's try and shoot this again, right? And then it was great twine. And then the reverse word.
$9 a roll. $9 a roll, bad.
The reverse word was scenario. So taco, taco, taco. Okay, let's talk about this last scene. I don't feel really good about it. We got to reshoot it. What do you want to do? Well, my objective is this. All right, what's yours? Okay, good. Ready? Scenario, 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 and boom, we sunk back into it, which gave us more freedom, to be honest, because it allowed us to trust one another more. There's no way we could have shot that map scene when Josh and I were being very physical. I was slamming the camera out of Heather's hands a couple times. You can't do that and feel safe as an actor. Actors their job is to trust each other. And you guys created this trust for us. These folks up here created a scenario that was live for 10 days in a row. They created this comfort zone, this trust zone. So for us to go out and ruin that trust, not knowing our relationships with each other, would have been toxic. So those couple of key words, I thought, really kind of anchored this thing together and allowed us to really trust one another when we were getting really physical with one another.
There it is.
Thank you.
Let's have another question. We got time for maybe a couple more. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that this is my first time seeing this movie, and I love it. It's
still working.
And I want to know if any of you guys have watched any found footage, like psychological horror movies such as Paranormal Activity, and how you compared it to Blair Witch.
They're all copying them. Sorry, I said that out loud. Excuse me. One of you guys grab this.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, I was invited to see one of the original screenings of Paranormal Activity at Paramount way back before it got released. And I thought it was really cool. And what I had to remind myself, and I think a lot of people have to remind themselves with Paranormal, and Oren Peli, who directed the movie, is that that's an entire feature film shot in someone's apartment, and it worked, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many of our student films tried to shoot in our apartments and it didn't work. But I'm always encouraged and inspired by other filmmakers that take a page from the Blair Witch Notebook and try doing it their own way. And for me, the only real prerequisite for the so-called found footage genre, which I guess we are either credited with for better or worse, is that there just needs to be a reason for the camera to be there. And when you lose sight of that conceit, when you don't give that justice, when you pretend that doesn't matter to the audience, is when you screw up. And there's lots of attempts at the found footage genre that that don't take that into account, I think, for me, sort of fail. But those that do it right, I think are really inspiring. I think really do a good job. So comes down to execution, comes down to good storytelling. There's no shortcut to that. So that film in particular, I think, did a really good job and has been hugely successful. And that people credit its inspiration to Blair Witch is very, very flattering to me.
Ben, you grabbed the mic. Were you about to say something?
I think Dan kind of covered a lot of what I was going to say.
Okay. Next question, please. We're going to run out of time here, so I want to try to get as many in as possible.
Hi, I'm Sandra Carr, and I saw the Blair Witch Project over, 20 years ago. Congratulations. It's still real, raw, relatable, and scares me to death, which is awesome. But my question is, what would you have changed it's now 20 years later, if you would change anything, and also what was your favorite part?
My contract.
Okay.
Was that your favorite part or the part you'd change?
No, I'm actually kidding. There's no way we would have been able to do this film without doing it non-union, doing it run and gun. I would not change a blessed thing about this process. I really wouldn't. And my favorite thing is the relationships that we've created over the years, and to be able to see these guys and their wives and kids and that whole thing about Lost I was talking about before. You know, we're all thankfully, I think, very happy in our lives wherever we are, whatever we're doing. Lots of different things happening up here and out in the world for us. Wouldn't change a thing, and really blessed to be part of this project. I'm really blessed that you guys still care enough to come out and on a Sunday night and listen to us banter on. So thanks.
I would echo it. The only thing I would add is the kid who just said that he saw it for the first time and loved it. I think that's my favorite thing so far.
Okay.
Here you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, next question.
Hi, guys. I'll make this brief. Just want to say, when the film came out 20 years ago, I read about it. I was living in Indiana at the time. That's how I found out about it from independent films, reading about it in magazines. And I got really excited about it as it was coming out. I was a camp counselor in upstate New York, and everyone at the camp was kind of getting scared about the film. And when the film came out, we had an arts and craft day where we made the stick figures.
Did you have good twine, or did you get the cheap shit?
How was your twine?
Camp is out of business based on the twine cost.
We played some pranks on our fellow counselors. There was a counselor named Natalie, and we had one of her campers stand in the corner of cabin during yeah. And I broke up a fight one day between two great friends, Caleb and Cody, and when I asked what the fight was about, Cody said that he was upset because Caleb was saying that the Blair Witch Project was real. But I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, and I had a love of film, and I didn't have the guts to move to Los Angeles, but as it turned out, my best friend was living here in Orlando, and he had a spare bedroom, and I figured, that's where the Blair Witch happened. And so in September of '99, I moved to Orlando. 3 weeks after moving here, I came to Enzian Theater for the first time, and my life changed. So I think you guys have made one of the greatest horror films of all time, but you also led me to Orlando, and you brought Enzian and the Florida Film Festival into my life. I uncovered the film programmer inside of me. I met some of the greatest friends of my entire life, and I met the love of my life, Charlene Blanchard. So thank you guys so much for making a film that has changed my life.
Long, but it needs no response. Next up, let's jump into the next question. Yes, sir.
Charlene, I think we might have to break this off.
Still improvising right now to this day. I thought you were saying that. I was like, whoa, wait a second.
No, not me. I just had.
Oh, talk up.
I just had a quick question. First off, I do want to say Shout out to my friend John, who is watching right now on the live stream, and he really wanted to be here tonight, and it's his favorite movie of all time. And I'm here with my
Hi, John.
I'm here with my
John.
girlfriend Lane too, and she bought the tickets as a birthday present for both of us, which we share the same birthday, so that's pretty wild. I just wanted to say thank you for making like a seminal horror movie. It defined a large portion of my life and a lot of other people's lives. And I did have a question in relationship to the house. How did you guys go about like finding that? I know that you shot it all in like one week or so time frame, so you must have kind of like been gearing towards that house towards the end of the film, right?
A guy named Matt Compton found the house, actually. He was kind of, he's a production coordinator or something in the thing. He'd already moved to LA by the time we made the movie, but when Greg and I arrived in Maryland, that night, Ed took us to that house, and it was behind a closed Nike missile base, like way out in the middle of Patapsco State Park, which has been recently made famous by Serial because apparently every other foot there's a dead body buried in that entire woods. So, no bodies.
No bodies.
But there were a couple of derelict houses that had like mostly fallen down, and that one was fully standing. Matt Blasey, what's the name of the house? Greg's house.
Greg's house, yeah.
Sorry, Matt Blasey is writing a book about the Blair Witch. Yes. Anyway, the place was terrifying. It was covered in graffiti, and as a production designer, like my job was more to just kind of get rid of the graffiti and make sure that the path what we wanted them to go through was the path that they could only go through because of other designs that didn't end up happening when it was going to be sort of an analysis of their footage and not just their footage. Yeah, that house was just already terrifying. It smelled exactly the way it looks. It was amazing. It was cold. You could see your breath, and as soon as you walked in, it's like, this is the scariest house I've ever set foot in my life.
For real, yeah.
So there it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Do we have any other questions back there? If we don't, I want to wrap this up with one final question for everybody here. Could you fill us in on kind of like a 30-second summation of what you've done since the Blair Witch Project?
No, not much. We did a few independent films, and I got married. I had 3 kids, and I actually started my real life. After struggling as a filmmaker for so many years, having a little money is actually a great thing. And now I'm doing a lot of television, and still in the business. And I just like these guys said, I just feel very blessed.
You're directing in TV?
I'm directing television, yeah, and and it's like I just feel like it's all because of Blair Witch. So this movie gave me so much, and I feel so blessed to have been a part of it and to have met these guys at the right time, and everything kind of came together. So I've been, like I said, there's like Mike said, I wouldn't change anything. What have you been up to, Mike?
I also got married and had kids to my wife, Julie, who actually was a projectionist here at Enzian. We met here at Enzian. And she's unfortunately not here. And I'm in New York. I founded a company called Campfire. And we do, somebody knows. We do a lot of kind of experiential marketing, really actually kind of taking stories. We work with clients like HBO. Did Game of Thrones. We launched Game of Thrones, True Blood, Westworld, and we kind of create immersive experiences that are steeped in the worlds, both online and physical.
Mr. Ben?
From this, I actually got to write Curse of the Blair Witch, which is on Sci-Fi, and then all these guys were off doing more exciting stuff when Blair Witch was hitting Showtime, and Artisan tapped me to do a thing called the Burkittsville 7. I'd been in LA for about, thank you very much. I've been in LA for about a year or so. My wife Alicia and I moved out. We actually arrived in LA the day after Blair Witch was picked up at Sundance, and then we went to Sundance, and it was, yes, of course I'm gonna get there, man. You just, hey, hold on, I'm gonna get there. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna talk all about Video Palace. Anyway, so we did Burkittsville 7, and then a special for the ill-fated sequel, Shadow of the Blair Witch. The sequel's Brick of Shadows, and then I did a similar thing for Hellboy. I've actually worked for Mike and Dan. I've done some video stuff for Campfire, and Rob. That's true. That's for my God. I can't believe I forgot Rob as well. But yeah, I worked. Dan hired me to direct a film called Alien Raiders for Warner Brothers and Raw Feed about 10 years ago. I have a web series that I do with a guy who I met at the Enzian Theater at the second brouhaha named Bob DeRosa. It's called 20 Seconds to Live. You can watch it right now.
Yeah.
We created it together. I directed, he writes it, I do the editing and stuff. And then most recently with Mike, Mike and one of his Campfire partners created a thing called Video Palace for Shudder, which is a horror fiction podcast. Everybody check it out. It's free. You can get it on iTunes, wherever. And it's, with Bob DeRosa, who I met here, co-wrote it, directed the whole thing, edited most of the interviews.
There you go. Mr. Cowie.
May 28th, I will celebrate my 25th wedding anniversary with the love of my life, Sarah Cowie, who's here. We made 2 wonderful kids. One daughter's 25, one's 21. 9 features, 6 computer games. I was very fortunate to be the creative director for the Dr. Phillips Center. And I just put in my notice to leave EA after 4 years, and I'm going back to making movies, TV, and VR and AR. So, and this is the first time I'm announcing it. So, there you go.
Pass it down to Dan.
Well, I started an MMA career. So I'm trying to get up. I'm trying to get up the welterweight.
Yeah.
The MMA.
He's
thing.
light.
Yeah.
He's in shape.
No, I mean, I did a bunch of movies and stuff like that. I'm right now currently I just finished shooting a film called Skyman, which is an alien movie that we shot in Southern California. I'm editing it right now, and so we're very excited about that. Also, we're going to be doing a series, sort of a thriller, kind of David Lynchian kind of thriller in Ybor City in Tampa. This summer, we're very excited about. And I'm involved with a project called Yellow Eyes with Harry Connick Jr. and Katherine Heigl. That's shooting as of Monday. We start shooting on Monday. So yeah, been pretty busy and been doing stuff ever since Blair. But Blair opened those doors for us, and it's been something I've been very fond of. And as an artist, you always want to leave a mark, right? And Blair Witch was that mark that can never be duplicated. So I will always have a spot in my heart for that. And in particular, this place. I got to say again, this is a place that's very special for me, and so glad you guys could see it tonight on the big screen in 35 print, no less.
So I was fortunate as an actor to work on both Ed and Dan's, I would call them sophomore films. They probably are not, because they know they made more films before and after Blair, but worked on The Objective with Dan and worked on Altered with Ed. And that was years ago, and continued, I think about 10 years ago. I kind of hung them up and I started studying, really enjoyed working with kids as I started teaching acting in my neighborhood, and had a couple of kids of my own, one of whom is here, my son Dean, and my daughter Mia, and my wife Tony of 20 years soon. So that's my greatest accomplishment. But the acting has never left me. I still teach acting, but because I started teaching it all those years ago, realizing maybe I could have an impact on kids, and having a tough childhood of my own, especially through those middle school and high school years with family issues, somehow I turned into, scarily enough, I'm a middle school guidance counselor, and have been for many years. Yeah. I love what I do. My wife and I run MCW Acting Studio up in Westchester, New York. And most recently, like our friend Matt Blasi, who is a tremendous fan and a wonderful man all around, who's written a book called 8 Days in the Woods, so that's going to come out soon. You should definitely pick that up. But I've also been, over the last couple of years, chipping away at a book based on my experiences of Blair. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll leave you with these words that haven't been read out loud yet. This is just a paragraph from somewhere around the end of the book. Anyone who worked on this film who tells you that they thought that the film wouldn't go anywhere is full of shit. Honestly, we all knew somewhere in the deep recesses of our minds that we had done something extraordinary in those woods. I knew this because the film shoot felt as if we were all hoping not to let one another down. We all felt that we had the most responsibility to the project. From the neighborhood buddies who were working out of sheer admiration of their friends' dreams, the Lonnies, the Ricks, the Carolyns of the shoot, to the producers, to the actors, to everyone in between. We all bought into something that we never had to be sold on in the first place. Something that was about to break the mold and turn filmmaking on its head. We were a part of something that was clearly bigger than us, even though it would be considered just a minuscule project in the entertainment industry. We were a punk rock grunge movement of movie making. I am proud to say that we still are. Thank you.
That's not fair to follow that. I didn't write anything. I don't have a book. I'm not a guidance counselor. Fuck, man. I guess. No, I have been lucky enough to continue to work in film as an actor for many, many years, and as of the last 6 or 7 have moved into writing and directing myself. I'm in post-production on my 3rd narrative feature right now, which is really exciting. And I should say, I had this whole kind of super fun second chapter as an actor working with the Duplass guys, who I met while I was on the festival circuit with a film that I had made. And I was obsessed with their first movie, The Puffy Chair, and they were obsessed with the Blair Witch Project. So I kind of met them through having done this movie and got to do Hump Day and their TV show Togetherness and all kinds of stuff, which was really, really fun. But yeah, and have a 2.5-year-old daughter myself and a wife, and we all did okay.
These are oddly the most stable filmmakers you will probably ever see at the Florida Film Festival. Guys, thanks for coming tonight. A hand for them, ladies and gentlemen.